There's an importance of listening. There's different types of listening. There's attention and listening. And there's also barriers to listening. In the importance of listening, there are two areas in our lives where it's used mostly, which is personal and professional. And we'll throw in academics into, well, it can actually be either one of these. It just depends how you view your academics. But let's just keep personal and professional in this for now. So in our personal lives, we have relationships. Some are romantic, some are just regular and friends and family. There could be other, again, academics could be in here. Have you ever just wanted someone to listen to you, not hear you? We all know the commercial probably. Can you hear me now? Well, yeah, but are you listening? That's the big thing. So when you're listening, there's different ways to do it than just hearing things. When there's conflicts in a relationship, people tend to hear, but not always listen unless they're really trying to resolve an issue or truly care. So next time somebody says, do you hear me? Say, no, but I'm listening to you. Or try, yes, I hear you, and I'm listening too. There's a big difference in that. I'd probably go with the, yeah, I'm listening to part. That'd probably get you more points. It ever felt like your parents weren't really listening to you, or your spouse, or your boyfriend, girlfriend, whichever it is? How do you find out? Eye contact is one of the biggest ways. Head movements, and again, eye contact, eye contact, eye contact. Sitting still, putting your phone down, saying, you know what? Let me put my phone, my watch, all my devices on Do Not Disturb and let me listen to you. Really, really listen to you. Give it a try. It's a little weird because most of us don't turn off our things, but try it sometimes. Even if it's just for 30 seconds, it makes a big difference. And it shows the other person that you're really making a big effort to do something about that. In our personal lives, we also have health and wellness. Here's the education, academics. Studying and listening properly helps improve our communication with what a doctor's saying, with what a teacher's saying, with what a counselor is saying, or advisor is saying, or tutor is saying. Think about this. Have you ever gone to the doctor or counselor and walked out a little bit confused as to, wait a minute, what do I have and what am I supposed to do? Again, if you have a cold or you have a flu, and they call it the Latin term of it, other than that, it might be a little confusing. Could actually be scary. So do this. Have them write it down, or you write it down, or say, you know what, can we record that so I can look that up? I'm kind of not sure of what's going on with that. The same thing with the teacher. You will eventually get into a class that will be above your head. And no offense, but there are some things that will make you feel very small in college. I've been there, and it's intimidating. So here's the thing. Ask a question. Ask the teacher, hey, I'm not quite sure what you mean by that. Now, there could be some embarrassment with that. You know what? Get over it. Because everybody else in the room probably feels the same way. And you know what? Somebody afterwards is probably going to come up to you and go, I am so happy that you asked that. I got it next time, okay? You never know. But again, follow up on questions. Definitely be sure of what you're hearing and what you're listening to. In the professional world, it is very, very important that you listen and hear everything that is being said for your job. Companies, at least as of 2014, and I guarantee you forward, want people who have high listening skills. As you can see by the chart here that was done from the McGraw-Hill companies in 2014. See how I got that reference in there? Listening, 33% of companies want higher listening skills. Speaking skills is 25%, writing 23%, and reading 19%. So we're actually listening more than we're reading. Now, a lot of times we get emails. The key to an email, think of it as listening to. Don't just read the first sentence. Listen to the whole message. In other words, read the whole message. I got in a little bit of a spit the other day because I didn't read all the way to the end of the email, and it was an official government email, and the government worker he was kind of rude about it, but he said, you didn't read the whole email, did you? I said, I read the part that mattered at the beginning. He said, yeah, but it's at the end that really mattered. I was like, oh, you're right. And I shut up. Again, I listened carefully and I resolved the problem. So again, we have to do things that work for everybody. In the professional world, again, here's the most important skill in the workforce. It's listening. People want people who listen. And it's not always because the ego of the boss says, hey, you better listen to me or else. It could be just customer service people. Here, this guy listens all day long. Do you think he can argue back? He can, but his job's going to end pretty quick and he'll be on the news because she's going to pull out her camera and it's going to go viral real quick. Companies and people want people who can listen effectively to solve problems because listening is about solving problems. What's the real problem? That you have to listen to. Now remember, hearing is not the same as listening. It is different. If I go, no dogs bark, so they're far away. But what did you do? You probably went, okay? So hearing is when sound just enters our ears and our eardrums and we understand the words or the sounds. So if I say hello, you might have said, oh, hello, or maybe you thought that. Or if I say, see you later, you might say later. Again, that's response. That's coding and decoding too. Again, hearing is different than listening. And who knows, for an extra, well, there's no points, but for a brownie point or a gold star, what is that actually called? And if you've watched Roger Rabbit, you know what that's called. Listening involves more than sensing or hearing words too. It also involves understanding and being able to interpret the meaning of the words in the use or the context of the sentence or the phrase. Because if somebody says, hey, I'm going to go get another drink. Well, if you're just hearing that, hey, I got to go get a drink. I'll be right back. What kind of drink am I getting? Where is it? Now, I'm at home sitting at my office. All the drinks are downstairs. I have nothing in my office. So I might say, hey, I'm going to go downstairs. I'm going to hit pause. I'm going to go to drink water and I'll be right back. Okay, great. I'm going to go downstairs and make some coffee and I'll be right back. You can listen to the coffee maker as I foam it up and do all this stuff. But if it's, say, at a place of business, hey, I'm going to go out for a drink. You want to go? Well, that's not the same as getting a coffee. Do you want some? Now, if you're not old enough to appreciate that, when you turn 21, you might. But again, we have to look at this in context. What is somebody saying? What are we hearing? And what are we actually listening to? And again, our response can show the other person that we're actually listening. No, you know what? I don't want to drink unless you're going out for coffee or a Propel or some, a Monster or something like that. Respond back. So again, listen and respond. Let them know, yeah, you're hearing it. One thing the authors like to talk about is that math or chemistry. They think those things are hard. Yeah, and English might be hard. American history, mid-1700s can be hard if you don't have that era. European, early medieval, Baroque music can be really difficult unless you're into that kind of thing. So if you're having issues with what you're listening to, ask the questions for clarity. That's always the safest way to do this. There's different types of listening. There's listening to discern content and intent, listening for learning, listening for relating, and we're listening for pleasure. So listening to discern content and intent. This is really big in politics. When I hear politicians speak, the content isn't necessarily what they mean because it's politics. Again, that's context. And again, it's my interpretation based on my perspective, based on my experience of politicians saying things that they say they didn't mean that. Okay, well, let's go to celebrities. Oh, I didn't mean to tweet that. Well, why did you tweet that? Yeah, that's what they meant. But again, what's the intent? Maybe it was just to make more book sales. There's somebody in the news now that's accusing our president of something that happened back in the 90s. I'm not going to get into details. But I just see that as, seriously, you're not giving super details. You're giving quotes out of your book. So therefore, it's nothing new. And you're repeating. So the content, I hear it. I'm listening to it, but what's the intent? So again, think of what you're hearing, think of the context, and think of the intent of what the message really is. What's the goal of the message? Listening for learning. Well, you're doing that right now, hopefully. When we go to class, when we go to seminars, we listen for answers that might help us with a test, with an assignment, with a pop quiz, with not feeling embarrassed or not feeling stupid at the next class, when we have to work with a group, or when the teacher just randomly calls on people. So, what do you think of this? And you go, what? That means you weren't listening or you weren't paying attention. The other thing about listening for learning is multitasking. I'll ask you, is multitasking truly possible? Now, right now, you might be listening to me, watching a video on silent, or maybe listening to music and probably checking out Facebook on your phone. Hey, that's okay. But are you truly learning what I'm saying? Because all of a sudden, if I say, and in about 12 seconds, this video is going to stop and there's going to be a 20-question quiz, you better be ready for it. Ready? I'm kidding, okay? But that probably got your attention. And you might have actually sat up or put your phone down or thought, oh my God, what's he doing? He's never done this before. Again, that means you're listening. So again, think about what you're doing. If listening for 50 minutes is very difficult, it may be. It takes some practice. So take it in chunks. But here's the thing with multitasking. Turn off your devices. Now, not the power. Just turn them to airplane mode, to silent. This morning, I was at the grocery store and I'm moving the groceries around and my wife and I were talking and all of a sudden my pocket starts blowing up, my wrist is vibrating and I'm like, what is going on? And the cashier's asking me and the baggers, do you want plastic? And I'm like, no, wait, what? And it was just too much. So my multitasking dropped drastically. So I ignored the watch, I ignored the phone, I said, hold on a minute and this, and I think the cashier didn't hear me because she wasn't listening. Again, it's a crazy situation. And these things happen. This is part of life. But when you're in a classroom and you're taking notes, are you listening for certain things to write down? Or are you writing down every single thing, which actually isn't listening, that's hearing. So think about your note taking. Are you actually hearing and writing? Or are you listening for key things and then writing things down? Again, that's a whole separate ball of wax. Good luck on that. Your note taking is your personal way to do it, but be careful what you're listening for. Listening for relating, empathetic listening. This is attempting to understand what somebody else is really saying, what they mean, and what context it is, and maybe what they want in return. Now, you may do this naturally. You may be an empathetic listener where somebody says, I don't feel good today. And you go, Okay, well, you heard them, but were you listening? I don't feel good today. What's wrong? Oh, I don't know. Well, are they just trying to get your attention? Or are they really trying to start an investigation into what's going on? That investigation, they're prompting you to begin by saying, I don't really feel good today. Well, again, look at their face, look at their body posture, see what's going on. In relationships, it's all about listening. If you don't listen in a relationship, you probably aren't going to have a relationship for much longer. Or it's very shallow, or it's one of convenience. So be careful of that. When you do move in with a roommate, eventually, some way, shape, or form, whether it's in college or in life, or even change rooms with a brother or sister, cousin, whatever it is, into a new family's home, you're going to listen to the rules, hopefully. Not just, hey, I'm just going to do this stuff over here and just don't bother me. Yeah, that can happen too. But you're still going to listen to, hey, lights out at 10 o'clock because I go to sleep and I like it pitch black in the room. Keep the drape shut. That's listening, because if you open it, they might not take very kindly to that. So be careful of empathetic listening. Respond. Eye contact. Again, turn the phone off. Put your electronics away. Listening for pleasure. Well, this is pretty easy to understand. What makes you happy? Do you like to watch Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime, play music, iPod, iPad, Snapchats, whatever it is, YouTubes? What makes your ears happy? That gets the stuff to your brain. Again, we listen for fun. We listen for relaxation. I turn on certain music to take a nap to. Most people can sleep to it. For some reason, I can. Again, whatever works for you, use it. Attention and listening. There is a listening process, and it looks pretty complex, so let's break this down. Trust me, this is not that hard once we break this down. The way we respond to what we hear is two different ways. There's automatic response and there's selective responses. Now, if I hear woo, 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 the siren, it's a bad impression, but if I played a siren, you probably would maybe, stand up and look around and go, whoa. If you're in your car, it would be bad. That's why I'm not playing a siren. I thought of doing that. If you hear a loud noise, you might jump, go, oh my God, that scared me because my volume is up. How about if my cell phone's not near me, but if I could get it to buzz, you might actually reach for your cell phone automatically because that's what you're used to doing. How about selective attention? This is where you go to a class and your intent is, I'm going to go there and I'm just going to listen. Most times you don't consciously go, I'm going to listen really hard this time. Well, you might if it's something important, but you might show up and just kind of, you hear, wah, 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 wah. The Charlie Brown teacher, right? You might hear that. And then all of a sudden you hear something, and the quiz tomorrow will be on this chapter. And then you hear, wah, 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 wah. And the quiz, it's pass or fail. Wah, 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 wah. And if you fail, there's no second chances. Wah, wah, wah. Okay, so that's selective attention. Realize when you start to hear something, try to zoom in on it. Try to, in other words, laser focus on what's being said. When you hear your favorite music or something that turns you on and your brain starts clicking, you might start, popping your foot around. Pay attention to that and go, wow, my foot's moving. Well, that's selective attention. Or maybe you put your book down and sing along with it or dance when nobody's looking, of course. Conversation with a friend. You don't necessarily have to have that conversation, but maybe you choose to. So again, these are different listening processes, and it's all about attending and focusing on different things. Scanning and choosing what we listen to sometimes has to be worked on, sometimes not. You can zip through all your emails and your scan of Facebooks and Snapchats and all that stuff. That can be really quick because it's an automatic thing, but that's taking in stimuli. And maybe you don't respond to every Facebook. My Facebook blows up every morning. It's 9+ things or whatever it is. And maybe I'll respond to one, maybe none. I'll get birthdays from people that are in my friends group of 1,400 people, whatever it is. But most times I won't say happy birthday unless it's family or a real close friend that I actually talk to physically at least more than once or twice a year, or somebody that I knew 10 years ago, but we stay in touch that way. How about when you walk into a room? Do you actually look up from your device and look to see, well, first of all, are you in the right room? And we know from the week before the 4th of July, or actually it was the week before, it was Informational Speech Day, that if you walked into the room that we were supposed to be in, you noticed there was no chairs and the fans were on, like I did. I thought, uh-oh, where's class at? And luckily I heard some voices because I was about to go down to security and say, where's my class happening? So again, taking the stimuli, see what's going on. Choosing what to listen to and how is another way. Reading and commenting on a few posts, again, you have that choice. When you hear something on your phone, and you have a Facebook blow up, do you actually respond to it or you just ignore it? Some people only do Facebook in the morning or at night. Some people do it running throughout the whole day. How about when you sit by a friend and begin a conversation with them? Does that actually happen, or do you actually tweet with them even though you're sitting there? And I've seen people walking in the hallway, I swear to you, texting each other, not even talking. Absolutely amazing that they do that. But they're probably sharing pictures, of course, or Snapchat, something fun. Activating your memory. Now, this is going to be challenging for you. How long is your short-term memory good for? How about your long-term memory? Let's break this down. Short-term memory. This is what we temporarily use to store information. Okay, this is very quick. Usually most of us can retain about 7 things, simple things, plus or minus 2. And it lasts for about 15 to 20 seconds. If we don't move that short-term memory information to long-term memory, and there's a very extensive process how to do that we can't get into. I've taken classes on this. That memory will be gone. You may remember it later, but generally it's just wiped. It's kind of like your computer just being reset. We have limited amounts of storage for short-term memory. If you're one of those people that can actually remember things perfectly, the eidetic memory or the photographic memory, you are blessed. I've met maybe 3 or 4 people in my life that are good. One that was amazing. He actually set a Guinness Book of World Record back in the 80s. He memorized an entire phone book. Absolutely amazing. I saw him at a seminar. There's probably 50 people. And he went up to the first person. He says, all right, I'm going to blow all your minds. And he took off his jacket. He had short sleeves. Now remember, no electronics. There was no cell phones, no recording devices. And he said, I'm going to blow your minds. Watch this. He goes, what's your name and what do you do? Went to the next person. What's your name? What do you do? He ran around the room to all 50 people. He said, now pay attention. And he went back around the room. He got everybody's name right and exactly what they did right. Absolutely amazing. Now, he's gifted. He does have a photographic memory. He told us this, but he also does what's called stacking. So let's check something really quick. I'm going to give you 7 items. Pay attention. Pizza. A yacht. A desert island. Winning the lottery! Woohoo! A horse. 6,387.82. Ice cream. And a cool car. All right, so your short-term memory is good for about 15 seconds. To get that into long-term memory, we tend to remember the negative more prominently. Did I tell you anything negative in those 7 things? All right, so here's the deal. What did I just tell you? What are the 7 things? Maybe you get 2 or 3 things. We're going to do this live in class too, because it's way more fun when we do it, and I'm going to do some different things. But here's the deal. Don't be embarrassed. Don't be shy. Don't be upset that you can't remember them. This is a normal thing. Long-term memory, it takes practice to move short-term information into long-term information. It's just called attending to the information, saying this is important, and then moving it there. Now, it's not always so simple, and it's not always so hard to do that. It depends what the information is. Our long-term memory, we reserve it for facts, figures, concepts that you know and you have to remember. In other words, you're studying for math and you know you have to remember the quadratic formula. It's the only formula I can actually remember, or the Pythagorean theorem, and I can't remember that one. But if I saw it, I go, oh yeah, I know what that is. I've seen it decades and decades and decades, but I don't remember it because I don't use it. So the more you use something from short-term, the more it'll go to long-term memory. And again, this takes practice. There are some surveys and things that you can do to find out how good your memory is. And there's a lot of practice stuff you can do to absolutely increase your memory. So barriers to listening, there's quite a few. Noise related to barriers to listening. There's physical distractions. These are everything out in the environment that can possibly get in your way. If there is something that is really bothering you, and you can't hear through all this stuff, it makes it really hard to hear things. Now, I was just scratching on the mic and clicking my fingers, but that could be a physical distraction. How about loud music at a party? If a car next to you is booming and your windows are vibrating and your vision's blurring and you're trying to have a phone conversation, that's a physical distraction. Mental distractions is when our mind starts to wander. This is where we start to maybe worry or get stressed about things, and it gets a little bit hard to listen to things. How about when I was a little kid, you may have done this too, thinking about recess or lunch or going to play, gym, or not playing dodgeball. When I was a kid, we played dodgeball, and it hurt back when I played as a kid. We had hard balls, not these sharp balls. They're like puff balls. But we worried about that stuff because we didn't want to be embarrassed by walking around with red marks on our face all day. That's a mental distraction. Multitasking, trying to do 2 or more things at once. You really shouldn't do it, and you really can't do it effectively because our brain actually can only do one thing at once, but there's milliseconds in between. So if you're trying to talk on the cell phone and do Facebook and do homework and listen to music and do this and do that, something's probably not going to happen right. Now, you might be able to do it for short periods of time. It may be normal, but to do it efficiently, something that says maybe writing a paper, preparing a speech, something with a grade, you're probably going to want to focus in on that. Factual distractions can definitely be a barrier to listening, that you're focusing so hard on what is being said, you actually miss what's being said because you're over listening. This has happened to me a few times. You might have noticed that you're really trying to focus in on the teacher, and because you're trying to move what the teacher's saying into that long-term memory, you actually lose track of what's being said. That is noise that can be stopped. In other words, just listen, but not so hard. Semantic distractions. This is over-responding to an emotion-laden word or concept. Somebody says a bad word, like beep. I can't say that because that'd be a bad word. Or they could use an expression like the feminist theory here that the author uses. That might set your brain going down a certain thinking. Gun control sets people off. Abortion sets people off. There's all kinds of words that all of a sudden our brains start, oh my gosh, there's that thing again. Oh my gosh. And they go on and on and on. I have a friend, as soon as he hears the word Trump, he goes crazy. He can't think about anything else. It's all negative, 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 negative. I'm like, why are you worried about this? Oh, because. I said, stop. I said, you're retired. You shouldn't have to worry about that. He goes, oh, you're right. because he was so trained on being negative about that. But that's a semantic distraction for him. Perception of others as barriers to listening can be another thing. There's status, stereotypes, and sights and sounds. Now, status means you're devoting attention to someone you think is particularly important. How about a celebrity? Okay, I love to throw the Kardashians under the bus. When the Kardashians speak, we have to stop everything that we're doing and do exactly what they say. Okay, well, I really don't know who they are. I don't really care for them. I think they've made some money. They're kind of famous. But are they famous because of what's going on social media, or is it something else? I kind of know who they are, but I really don't follow them. So their status doesn't impact me. There's certain people that I know in the world that when they speak, yeah, I'll listen to it. I don't put them on pedestals, but I'll tend to give them a little more attention than, say, somebody who is not important. Now, my students, you, I listen to. Your status is very important to me because it just is. That's the way it is. That's my role. So my perception of you is you're my student, and if you ask a question, you're deserving of an answer. That is not a barrier to listening. But if another student came up to me and asked me a question, I might not treat them the exact same as I do you, because I don't know them. They're going to be treated with respect, but not quite the same. Now, stereotypes. This is where it's negative. When you treat people in a negative way because you assume that they're part of a category of people that maybe you don't like. And we use this picture here, this nerdy looking girl. Well, she might not be nerdy. Maybe she's hungry. She's chewing on wood, part beaver here. And maybe she tripped and broke her glasses this morning. And maybe she's not nerdy. We don't know her. Maybe her contact prescription ran out and she had to go to her glasses and she's just nibbling on that pencil because she's stressed. Again, we can see that as a bad thing. The lunchroom, usually we see stereotypes. Again, be careful of that. That's a perception of barriers into listening. Sights and sounds. Certain voice qualities might turn you off. If you hear somebody with a really nasally voice and they talk like this, I tune these kind of people out because I just don't like it. Or a really screechy voice, if they scratch, There's certain things we just don't want to listen to. It just is not appealing to us, and that could be a barrier to listening. Self-related to barriers to listening, egocentrism. This is seeing yourself on stage and in the spotlight in every conversation. It's me, and it's all about me, and nobody's allowed on my stage. This is where you dominate every single conversation. This means you're probably not going to listen to people. You're going to hear them, but they're going to listen to you. Got to be careful of that. Defensiveness, acting threatened and feeling that you must defend what you've said or done every single time somebody says something. Stop judging me. Stop critiquing me. Do this, do that. If everybody's attacking you, that's a barrier to listening. Experiential superiority. This means you've been on the job longer than somebody else. You shouldn't have to listen to the new person, right? Or you're an 8th grader, why should you listen to 6th graders? Or we'll go up to, if you're a senior, why should you listen to the freshmen? Or if you're a first-year student, why should you listen to a senior? And or should a senior and or junior listen to a first-year student? You got to be careful of that. Experiential superiority, you're probably going to see that a lot more in your life than any other one of these things. Personal biases, this is letting your prejudices interfere with your ability to interpret what is actually being said. The accuracy, you may hear it, you may be listening to it, but because maybe it's somebody younger than you, you just think, well, they don't know what I know, so I think they're stupid already. Well, that's a personal bias. Be careful of that. Pseudo-listening. This is pretending to listen, but letting your mind or attention wander to something else. How about this? Let's update that. Pseudo-listening is when you go, and you're actually looking at your phone just absent-mindedly. Again, put down the electronics and not just lower it from your eyes. Actually turn the screen down to show people that you're listening. I guarantee you, try this as an experiment a couple times with people. Next time you have your phone up and somebody starts talking to you, set the phone down, screen face down, and take your hand off the phone and look at them in the eyes. I guarantee you, almost 99.9% of the time, they're going to look at your phone, they're going to look at you, and their eyes are going to get wide. Like, wow. Just that, or it might just be a millisecond, but pay attention to the effect it has on people. So again, think about all these things about listening. Start listening differently. Don't just hear people, but start listening to them.